Hey, it's your buddy Peace and Harmony with you here today. We are focusing in on the experience of subtle hostility within the manipulation tactic of a covert narcissist. Many viewers will email me with questions regarding especially relationships with a spouse with whom they've been married for oftentimes several decades. And they are now learning as their relationship has progressed, evolved, and grown, that there is a large deficit or a void or a feeling of loss or disconnection in the relationship. And they're now learning that this individual is a covert narcissist. And they're wondering, of course, also one of the very top questions I get is, how can this person be so cold? How can they be so distant? I want you to realize that the covert narcissist will use many sort of underhanded, very passive, very docile, very difficult to distinguish manipulation tactics. And one of those is a subtle form of hostility. They're the last person who you would expect to be hostile, have anger, have a quiet rage about them. But it is this quiet rage, this quiet hostility that oftentimes tends to be driving their covert narcissism. Covert narcissism is an experience with a character disordered individual, as defined by the cluster B in the mental health professions and psychology, where this individual has an inflated sense of self-importance and also coupled with a lack of empathy and many other diverse and applied feelings or experiences or expressions within the personality, which creates relationship issues. So the main thing to understand is that it's this lack of empathy coupled with this heightened sense of self-importance that creates a conglomerate of different emotions, behaviors, thought patterns, and really relationship dynamics that are created within the relationship with a covert narcissist. And I'd like to focus here on the experience of a very sort of subtle hostility, a subtle anger, a quiet rage that tends to permeate this individual. Now, as we mentioned, this individual, oftentimes what was most attractive about them in the beginning is that they were so quiet, unassuming, the strong and silent type. They seem to emanate just a sort of serenity about them. Very unassuming, undemanding, and they allowed you to really be yourself, in essence. So taking the helm, being a leader, being proactive for them. They were really the ultimate fixer-upper. They seemed to be so yielding in the relationship. They allowed you to be forthright, you to be a leader, you to get your way, if you will. So it is this original feeling of their yielding, which means, them kind of conceding or them permitting or their permissiveness, that I think attracted a lot of people to the covert narcissist. But it is in this passivity, this yielding, that the covert narcissist manipulates. So they, in essence, allow a violation of boundaries because they don't establish any boundaries. So in this not establishing of any boundaries with the relationship, so they're not really, oftentimes, in this passivity, there's not an expression, there's a deficit of expression or communication of values, where they stand. They tend to be very meek, very passive, very almost like you want to feel sorry for them because they come from this meekness, almost a feeling of weak or lack of assertiveness, that they then create this power vacuum within the relationship. So you have to over-obligate to them. You have to overdo. You have to overcompensate. You might develop then the codependency, always trying to put them first, always trying to consider their needs, take care of them, be a caretaker. And then you then feel fulfilled in being a caretaker. But one thing, what do we state? That, you end up paying attention to them and their needs prior to, rather than focusing and having your own needs met, observed, validated, and mirrored back. So this is the very subtle way that the covert narcissist will manipulate. So in other words, it's this yielding that then creates the very aggressiveness that is required to keep the relationship together, the glue, if you will. So you, by taking care of their needs, you then yield and then let go of or forget to identify, or just don't identify, or don't verbalize, communicate, live, and then have your needs satisfied, heard, validated, mirrored, etc. So it is very much, takes years oftentimes in a relationship, as I mentioned. Many people, many of the viewers who have experienced covert narcissism, you know, they've been in a relationship with them perhaps for decades before they're realizing that much of their life, time, and energy has been devoted to this person, and that they have very much been on the back burner. So I want you to understand that this is almost as an experience of a negativity, but it's a very passive negativity. But because it's so chronic and ongoing and it's taken so long, oftentimes it becomes a very deep-seated feeling of pain and loss, and you know, within the target or supply individual. So oftentimes it's very interesting or important for you to understand that this passivity, or this yielding or abuse by neglect or withdrawal, or lack of communication, lack of empathy, putting this person, you know, puts this person kind of at the forefront of the relationship. This is how they lead, by passivity, if you will. The source or cause of that oftentimes in the covert narcissist is a passive or a quiet hostility, a quiet rage. So they're able to hold on to this feeling of contempt, tension, or sort of a very sort of aloof scorn that they will. In other words, they tend to project the feeling that you are not worthwhile. They don't state it. They don't say overtly, you know, you're worthless, you're garbage, you know, you're unimportant. They don't say that, but it's through the passive and really sort of the very quiet rage or quiet anger, very sort of subtle hostility with which is created, almost like a slow simmering, if you will, in the relationship. And oftentimes that causes people to lash out and become very vengeful. So be very careful if you have reacted to a covert narcissist in your life that has kind of boomeranged on you a sort of self-directed hostility, anger, or self-reproach. Let that go. Let go of that dynamic in your relationship, and let go of that tendency then, or pattern that might have been created to self-sabotage and become self-reproaching, or self-regretting, or self-defacing. Self-effacing meaning, you know, where you tend to insult yourself, berate yourself, criticize yourself. So release that tendency to be constantly self-reproach, you know, self-critical, things of this nature. Try to let go of that habit that oftentimes is instilled in the target or the supply or the individual who is in a relationship closely with a covert narcissist. Peace and harmony with you here today. I hope these videos do help. Please share, please subscribe for more great tools, videos, discussion, and support.